Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. An unidentified ship appeared, moving faster than physics allows. Phantom in the void. The Axelarian Confederacy had ruled the known galaxy for nearly 8 centuries. Their sleek warships patrolled trade routes across 17 star systems, their technology was unmatched, their diplomacy respected, and their enemies long since forgotten, or so they believed. Senior technician Nadira Kill stared at her monitor aboard Border Station Vega 8, positioned at the farthest reaches of Confederate space. Something had triggered the long-range sensors. Something fast. Too fast. The signature moved unlike anything in her extensive database. "Commander Theos," she called, voice steady despite the unease crawling up her spine. "I'm tracking an unidentified object entering Sector 47, speed and trajectory inconsistent with known vessels." Commander Shantheris, a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, approached with a dismissive flick of his secondary antenna. "Probably another rogue comet or sensor ghost. We get them every cycle." "No, sir. This is different," Nadira replied. The object was changing course at mathematically impossible angles, no inertia delays, and it was emitting no recognizable energy signature. The commander's exoskeletal plates shifted, the Axelarian equivalent of a frown. He watched as the blip on their screens executed another perfect, physics-defying maneuver, avoiding an asteroid field without slowing. "Send the alert to Central Command," he ordered. Priority Alpha. Within hours, the Confederacy's High Command on Scylla Prime received the report. High Admiral Zeeler, 6-time decorated war hero of the Confederacy, studied the data with growing concern. In her 2 centuries of service, she had never seen anything like this. "Deploy the 3rd Fleet to intercept," she commanded. "I want answers." 5 Confederate cruisers, each the size of a small moon, converged on the mysterious object's projected path. Their sensors probed the void, searching for any clue about the intruder. Commander Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, her scaled hands clasped behind her back as she observed the tactical display. Unlike most Kairans, she had spent years studying extinct civilizations and ancient conflicts. The unusual had always fascinated her. "Status report," she demanded. "The object appears to be a ship, Commander," her tactical officer replied, "but it matches no known configuration. Its whole composition is unreadable. Our scans simply bounce off. Attempt communication on all frequencies." They transmitted greeting protocols in every known language in cipher. The response was silence. "It's slowing," the tactical officer announced suddenly. "Matching our speed." Voss felt her dorsal spines tingle, an ancestral warning response. "Shields up. Weapons on standby." The unknown ship hovered just beyond weapons range, perfectly still. Its hull was midnight black, with no visible seams or propulsion systems, a perfect void against the stars. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the ship accelerated to impossible speed and vanished from their sensors before anyone could react. It reappeared directly between 2 Confederate cruisers, so close that collision seemed inevitable. "Evasive maneuvers," Voss shouted. But there was no impact. The ship moved through the Confederate formation with surgical precision, as if the massive warships were merely holographic projections. "How is this possible?" someone whispered on the bridge. The intruder vanished again, only to reappear near an unmanned monitoring station moments later. The station went dark, no explosion, no distress signal, just silence. Then another outpost, and another. Each time, no warning, no survivors, no trace. Back on Scylla Prime, panic began to spread through High Command. High Admiral Zeeler convened an emergency council of the Confederacy's brightest minds. "Whatever this is, it's moving through our territory with impunity," she stated, voice hard with frustration. "Could it be the Styrian Collective?" suggested one general. "They've been quiet since the last treaty." The Styrians don't have this technology, replied Science Director Mox. Nobody does. In the midst of their debate, every screen in the command center suddenly flickered. A message appeared, simple text in an ancient language that hadn't been used in centuries. We returned. The room fell silent. Lieutenant Kren, a young archivist, was the first to speak. That's Terran script, he stammered. Impossible. The Terrans were eradicated in the Purge Wars, snapped Admiral Zeeler. Their planet reduced to ash, their colony sterilized. There hasn't been a Terran sighting in over 300 years. Commander Aravos stepped forward. Admiral, historical records from that era are incomplete. I studied them extensively. There are inconsistencies. Explain, ordered Zeeler. The official records state that the entire Terran species was eliminated due to their aggression and technological unpredictability. But there are classified archives that suggest some may have escaped into uncharted space. The room erupted in murmurs. Humans, Terrans, as they were formerly known, had been considered a dangerous anomaly when first encountered by the early Confederacy. Unlike other species that evolved over millions of years, humans had progressed from primitive tool users to starfarers in mere millennia, their technological advancement curve deemed evolutionary impossible and existentially threatening. In archives locked away from public access were warnings about human unpredictability, creativity, and their strange ability to adapt technologies in ways no other species could conceive. They didn't follow established patterns, they didn't respect the natural order of development. That was why they had to be eliminated, or so the ancient Confederacy believed. I need access to the war vaults, Voss requested. The complete unredacted records from the Purge Wars. Admiral Zeeler hesitated, then nodded. Granted. But this stays contained. 3 hours later, Commander Voss stood in the dimly lit archive chamber, surrounded by data crystals that hadn't been accessed in centuries. What she found made her blood run cold. Project Terminus, the systematic elimination of humanity, not because they were aggressive, as public records claimed, but because they were unpredictable, because they developed too quickly, because they found solutions that frightened the methodical, measured Confederacy. But there was more. The last entry, dated just after the supposed completion of the Purge, contained a warning: not all had been accounted for. Some ships escaped beyond the void barrier, into regions the Confederacy couldn't navigate. A pursuit fleet had been ordered to falsify their reports. It was easier to claim total victory than admit failure. As Voss absorbed this revelation, an alert sounded throughout the facility. The unknown ship had reappeared, this time in the heart of Confederate space, approaching the capital itself. Across thousands of worlds, communication systems were hijacked. Every screen, from personal devices to massive public displays, showed the same image: a black ship against the stars, and beneath it, a message in perfect modern Confederate script. 300 years ago, you tried to erase US from existence. You failed. We did not forget. We did not forgive. We evolved. Now, we return, not as the hunted, but as the hunters. On the command deck of the Confederate flagship, Commander Voss watched as the mysterious vessel approached. Their weapons were armed, their shields at maximum, but deep down, she knew it wouldn't matter. They weren't facing some unknown alien species, they were facing humanity, a humanity that had spent centuries preparing, evolving, and waiting. The unknown ship suddenly powered up, energy readings spiking to levels their sensors couldn't even quantify. But it didn't fire. Instead, it broadcast a signal, a simple pulse that traveled across Confederate space at impossible speed. Everywhere the signal touched, ancient systems began to wake. Dormant machines buried on Confederate worlds for centuries activated, satellites thought dead for generations changed orbit, even Confederate technology behaved erratically, as if responding to commands they couldn't hear. They had been here all along. Voss whispered, horrified. Watching, waiting, planning. As if in response to her words, a final message appeared across every system. Phase 1 complete. Reclamation begins now. The phantom ship accelerated toward Scylla Prime, and for the first time in its long history, the Confederacy knew true fear. Panic gripped the Solarian Confederacy. The mysterious ship hovered near Scylla Prime, making no aggressive moves, yet somehow more terrifying in its stillness. Emergency evacuation protocols activated across the capital, citizens filled the streets, their many eyes turned skyward in fear. In the Grand Council chamber, the highest leaders of the Confederacy gathered in frantic debate. "We must strike now with everything we have," insisted General Drex, his armored exoskeleton clicking anxiously. "Before more of these ghosts appear and provoke full-scale war. We don't even understand what we're facing," countered Science Director Mox. High Admiral Zeeler stood silently at the tactical display, watching the unmoving vessel. "If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done so already. This is about something else." Commander Aravos entered the chamber, data crystals in hand. All eyes turned to her. "What did you find?" "The truth," Voss replied grimly. 30 years ago, we didn't just try to eliminate the Terrans because they were unpredictable. We feared them because they mastered adaptation at a rate that defied evolutionary logic. While our species took millennia to advance, they did it in generations. She activated a holographic display showing ancient footage, early human spacecraft, primitive by Confederate standards, yet advancing visibly from frame to frame. The high command of that era saw only one outcome: if humans continued to evolve, they would surpass us. So they launched a preemptive strike against Earth and all known human colonies. The footage showed Confederate warships bombarding a blue-green planet, continents scarred with fire, orbital habitats falling from the sky. "We murdered billions," Voss continued. "And told ourselves it was necessary for galactic stability. But a handful of human ships escaped. According to these records, they fled beyond the void barrier, a region we couldn't navigate. And now, they've returned." An alert in Zeeler's voice. The chamber's communication system activated. A human face appeared on the main display, features hardened by age and determination, eyes holding the weight of centuries. "I am Captain Caden Shaw of the Terran vessel Nemesis," he said, voice resonant and calm despite the gravity of the moment. "After 300 years, we speak again." Zeeler stepped forward. "This is High Admiral Zeeler of the Solarian Confederacy. Your presence in our space is an act of aggression." Shaw smiled without warmth. "Interesting perspective, considering many of these worlds once harbored human colonies before your ancestors reduced them to ash." "That was centuries ago," Zeeler countered. "None alive today bear responsibility for those actions. Yet you continue to benefit from them. You expand across stars that might have been shared. You erase our very existence from your histories, teaching your children that we were violent savages who deserved extinction." He paused, expression softening. "But we didn't come for revenge, Admiral. If that were our goal, you would already be dust." Inside the Nemesis, Captain Shaw stood on a bridge unlike anything the Confederacy had seen. While their technology focused on crystalline structures and biological interfaces, human technology had evolved radically differently. The ship was partly mechanical, partly organic, and partly something else entirely, a synthesis blurring the boundaries between machine, biology, and consciousness. Shaw's second-in-command, Commander Diana Ree, approached. "All systems synchronized, Captain. The network is fully activated." Shaw nodded. For 3 centuries, humanity had hidden beyond the void barrier, adapting and evolving in isolation. They learned to bend physics in ways the mathematically rigid Axelarians could never imagine. They merged with their technology, rather than simply wielding it. Most importantly, they prepared. Stealth probes infiltrated Confederate space, planting dormant systems, gathering intelligence, and mapping the empire that nearly destroyed them. They studied Solarian psychology, technology, and tactics. When everything was ready, they sent the Nemesis not as a warship, but as a signal to awaken everything they built in secret. Back in the council chamber, Commander Voss studied the human captain with fascination and dread. What do you want from us? Recognition, Shaw answered simply. Acknowledgement of what was done to us, and space to exist. You expect us to simply surrender territory, sputtered General Drex. I expect you to face reality, Shaw replied. As we speak, human design systems integrate with your infrastructure across 17 core worlds. We could shut down your grid, disable your fleets, or worse. But that's not our goal. To demonstrate, every light in the chamber flickered briefly. Security systems went offline for precisely 3 seconds, then reactivated, a perfect display of control. Impossible, whispered Director Mox. Our systems are isolated, protected by technology we've had 8 centuries to refine. Interrupted Shaw. While you've been refining the same fundamental designs for 800 years, we've been reinventing ourselves with each generation. He leaned forward, image seeming to fill the room. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, Admiral, it's our adaptability. It's why your ancestors feared us. It's why they tried to exterminate us. And it's why we survived. On screens across Confederate space, citizens watched in stunned silence as the truth emerged: their history was built on genocide, and the victims had returned. In orbit around Scylla Prime, more ships appeared, dozens, then hundreds, not warships bristling with weapons, but vessels of exploration, commerce, and habitation, a civilization returning from exile. We don't seek war, Shaw continued. We seek coexistence, but on equal terms, not as supplicants begging for scraps from your table. Admiral Zelker straightened her spine, struggling for dignity in the greatest crisis in Confederate history. If we refuse these terms, then we withdraw, Shaw said simply. We take our technology and leave. But we also take the truth with us, broadcasting it across every system in your territory and beyond. Your society faces its history honestly, or it faces collapse. Commander Voss stepped forward. Captain Shaw, I study what records remain of human civilization. Your people valued forgiveness and reconciliation. Is there no path forward that acknowledges our past crimes while building genuine partnership? For the first time, Shaw's stern expression softened. Commander Voss, Elara Voss. Those values you mentioned are precisely why we're having this conversation instead of a war. Reconciliation requires truth. It requires acknowledgement. Zeeler and the Council exchanged glances. Their options were limited: fighting would be suicide, denial would lead to collapse. Only one path remained. We require time to consult with our outer worlds, the Admiral said finally. You have 24 hours, Shaw replied. We've waited 300 years. We won't wait longer. As the transmission ended, Commander Voss approached the Admiral. I should be on the diplomatic team, she insisted. I understand their history better than anyone here. Zeeler nodded slowly. You'll lead it, because this isn't just a negotiation, it's first contact all over again with a species we tried to destroy. 24 hours later, Commander Voss stood in a neutral meeting facility on an ancient space station predating even the Purge Wars. Captain Shaw arrived with a small delegation of humans, each more diverse than Voss expected, some fully biological, others with visible technological enhancements, and a few existing somewhere in between. Humanity has taken many forms during our exile, Shaw explained, noting her fascination. We embraced change rather than fearing it. The negotiations were tense but productive. Humans would reclaim several uninhabited systems along the Confederate border, worlds that once held their colonies. A Truth Commission would document the Purge Wars accurately. Most significantly, technological exchange would begin carefully, gradually, but genuinely. Your people fear rapid change, Shaw acknowledged. We understand that now, though we don't share the sentiment. We'll proceed at a pace your civilization can absorb. As the formal agreements took shape, Voss found herself speaking privately with Shaw during a recess. Your technology, it's beyond anything we could have imagined, she admitted. How did you advance so quickly in isolation? Shaw smiled. Necessity. Desperation. And because questioning the impossible isn't heresy to us, it's our natural state. When your ancestors banished us beyond the void barrier, they thought they were sending us to die. Instead, they forced us to become something new. After centuries of preparing for this moment, Voss asked, what comes next for humanity? Shaw looked out the viewport toward the stars. We explore. We build. We remember. But we don't let the past consume us. That's another human trait your histories didn't capture. We can heal without forgetting. When the final accords were signed, something unexpected happened. The human delegation presented the Confederacy with a gift, the complete technological specifications for navigating the void barrier safely. There are wonders beyond that threshold, Shaw told the astonished Confederate leaders. Perhaps finding them together will help us build something better than either of our civilizations could alone. In the following months, human settlements appeared in the reclaimed territories. They were unlike anything in Confederate space. Organic and mechanical elements blended in harmonious designs that seemed to grow from their environments rather than impose upon them. Human ships moved freely through trade routes, bringing technologies, arts, and ideas long thought lost. It wasn't perfect. Centuries of propaganda couldn't be undone overnight. There were protests, isolated conflicts, and deep suspicion on both sides. But there was also curiosity, exchange, and, gradually, understanding. Commander Voss, now appointed as the first Confederate ambassador to humanity, stood on the observation deck of her new posting, a joint research station at the edge of the void barrier. Captain Shaw, her frequent counterpart in diplomatic matters, joined her. Do you think our ancestors would be proud of us? Voss asked, gazing toward the unexplored expanse. Shaw considered. Pride isn't what matters. Learning is. Growing is. My ancestors, who fell Earth, didn't live to see this day, but they believed it would come, not a day of vengeance, but a day of return. Humanity doesn't reclaim the past. We build the future. Voss mused, now we build the future together. The phantom and the void had become a bridge between worlds. And somewhere in the darkness beyond charted space, the next chapter of galactic history waited to be written. Beyond the void barrier. The joint research vessel Aurora slipped through the void barrier's shimmering threshold, its hull humming with both Karen crystalline circuits and human organic conduits. Commander Ilara Voss stood at the viewport, watching the stars warp into iridescent ribbons of light. At her side, Ambassador Caden Shaw offered a steadying hand on her scaled shoulder. First time through? He asked, voice quiet. Voss nodded, awe softening her stern features. I never imagined the barrier would bend reality itself. Shaw smiled. That's why we called it the Aurora, light after the darkness. Moments later, the vessel emerged into uncharted space. Voss's tactical officer, Lieutenant Heron, studied the sensor readouts. We're detecting energy signatures ahead, ancient but still active. Distance? Voss prompted. Approximately 120,000 kilometers, Heron replied. Multiple structures, ringed in a field of drifting debris. Shaw leaned forward. Ancient Terran outposts. We hid them here before the Purge Wars. Some never deactivated. Voss exchanged a surprised glance with her Karen crew. Show me. On the main holoscreen, orbiting platforms emerged, donut-shaped satellites linked by tubular walkways, their surfaces weathered but intact. Solar collectors still generated power, and tiny clusters of repair drones drifted in the void, tending to microfractures. Fascinating, murmured Science Director Mox, who had accompanied the expedition. A self-sustaining network, evolving on its own for 3 centuries. Shaw's eyes grew distant. These stations once supplied human colonies on nearby worlds. We abandoned them to survive. Now we return to reclaim what was lost. Voss steadied herself. Lieutenant Heron, prepare a boarding party. Ambassador Shaw, would you lead it? Shaw inclined his head. I'd be honored. Moments later, an airlock cycled open. Human Karen teams, armed with mapping probes and cultural preservation kits, floated into the main dock. The station's interior, once bustling with scholars and engineers, was silent save for the software of drone maintenance bots. Voss tapped her comm, Commander Voss to Indomitable, this is Alara. We found the first relic of pre-purge human civilization. On Scylla Prime, Admiral Zeeler received the news. Relief and excitement warred on her face. Prepare to broadcast. Let the Confederacy witness not only humanity's return, but the wonders they left behind. Back aboard the Aurora, Shaw guided his team down a curved corridor lined with data crystals. These hold centuries of Terran history, inventions, art, even personal logs. We must ensure their safe retrieval. Heron knelt to interface with a crystal. Decrypting, over 80% integrity. Ancient Terran script confirmed. Voss watched the human-Karen collaboration unfold, hands of different scales and shapes working side by side. In that moment, the centuries-old guilt and newfound hope intertwined. As the docking hull sealed behind them, Shaw turned to Voss. This is only the beginning. Together, we will rebuild not just star systems, but trust. Outside, the void barrier glowed a soft, welcoming blue, a promise that beyond its veil lay both the ghosts of history and the seeds of a shared future. Shadows of Dissent. News of the Aurora's discovery spread across the Solarian Confederacy like wildfire. In council chambers on Scylla Prime, debates once hushed now raged openly. High Admiral Zeeler watched the holofeed of live broadcasts showing Karen and human crews restoring ancient Terran outposts. They're rebuilding, she murmured to Science Director Mox. Our citizens need hope. Mox nodded, but her expression remained cautious. Hope is fragile. There are those who feel betrayed, that centuries of Karen sacrifice have been in vain. Across the capital's Grand Plaza, thousands had gathered beneath towering banners depicting the Black Phantom ship and the human emblem side by side. Some held placards proclaiming, "Forgive and rebuild," while others shouted, "Human scum," and "Remember the purge." Among the protesters, Councillor Varek raised his voice above the din, "We cannot embrace our former enemies as equals. They would see us subjugated in a generation." Nearby, Archivist Lieutenant Kren confronted him quietly. They return not for conquest, but for partnership. Have you forgotten the record falsifications? The lies we told ourselves? Varek's multi-jointed fingers clenched. I have not forgotten. I will not forgive. Meanwhile, aboard the joint research station at the edge of the void barrier, Commander Voss and Ambassador Shaw collaborated on a cultural exchange program. Voss guided a Karen xenobiologist through a Terran data crystal, while Shaw demonstrated how to safely interface human biotech with Karen crystalline hardware. We must safeguard both legacies, Shaw said, adjusting his neural uplink. Their stories deserve to be told accurately. Voss placed a gentle hand on his arm. And your people deserve recognition. This partnership depends on trust. But beneath the surface of cooperation lay growing unease. Late one evening, Communications Officer Halleys discovered anomalous transmissions, fragments of encrypted data being siphoned from the station's archives. Alarmed, Halleys alerted Voss. Someone is copying the Terran records. If they reach the wrong hands, it could ignite war. Voss's eyes narrowed. Seal all external channels and identify the culprit. We cannot afford another act of sabotage. As Security Chief Rana worked through the night to trace the leak, Voss confided in Shaw. Our greatest challenge may not be beyond the void barrier, but within our own walls.